All right, welcome everyone to the HVAC 2.0 show. And tonight we're going to be being kind of philosophical. Like we've got some ideas of things to do here, but we'd love to hear what you all are thinking. We'll throw some different things out there and um, see what you think. But we want to talk about why average residential HVAC installs are so bad. So we'll talk about one metric in particular. We're going to talk about external static pressure or duct pressure, as we usually call it. And then what on earth do we do to try and make this better? Because they're just bad. So Jim Bergmann doesn't necessarily love it when I quote him on this, but I'm pretty sure it was run off of his data from measureQuick that upwards of 90% of residential HVAC installs have a detectable fault. So it's like 92, 93, something like that. But I'm 99% sure that came from measureQuick data, but it was one of the national labs that I think actually did the analysis. So Ben Reed was sure to correct me on that. And one of these weeks, we'll probably have Bergman on, and we can kind of hammer that out and kind of see what he thinks and what he's working on, and how there's synergy between measureQuick and HVAC 2.0. But before we move on, need to do introductions. So we have Ken in Athens, Ohio. So he is our professor emeritus, or however you say that. Um, uh, so he's forgotten more about HVAC installs than many of us will know. Um, and we have Jeff in Indianapolis, who he has long been the grease man for companies. So when a project goes really sideways, Jeff gets sent in. So he's seen some interesting things and had to deal with it, and that's part of what dragged him in to be part of 2.0 here. We've got our token Canadian, Abby, up in Winnipeg, and then we have TK, Ted Kidd. And if we're lucky, Tanner will join us later. He is working on a commercial install right now of, I believe, 3 carrier green speeds. So kind of an interesting project for him. So he was diving into that this week. And I just barely made it myself. I've been working on a roof all day. So came home, hopped in the shower, threw some slides together, and went from there. So it'll be good. Please, everybody, hop in and comment. Oh, Tanner made it after all. Let's let him in. So, Tanner, Mr. Alabama, how's the project starting down there?
It's going good. Coming along.
I'm excited for you. It's a heat pumping a new building down there. So, in any case, let's dive in. As I like to do, I like to start with the points that we're going to kind of cover and then go from there. But please, by all means, hop in and let us know where you're from and what you think about this, what things you've tried, what's worked, maybe what hasn't, things like that. So we've got someone from Portland, Oregon. I need to put that dumb link in. If you go to streamyard.com/Facebook, it'll make it so we can actually see your username, which is nice. Okay, so let's touch on, flip my slides here. So it's funny, I did this really later than I should have, so I probably would change the title on this. So I have in here key metrics to improve residential retrofit HVAC installs. So I started off with, at the bottom here, static pressure on the low side, probably low enough that there will be some arguments, which is great. Let's have some discussion. From 0.08 on the low side to 0.3 on the high, not 0.5, 0.3 inches of water column. Evacuate every system below 200 microns at install, and charge properly to line set length. Yeah, can you tell I rushed my slides tonight? Just says line set length. That's supposed to be in there. But we were discussing before we hopped on that if the system is sold wrong, it doesn't matter. If you put a system in that's too large, what are you going to do for static on that? There isn't enough ductwork to handle it. So client education up front is really, really critical, and offering the right system, whatever that looks like, is really critical. So this is what we're going to run through, but we're going to spend a ton of time on static pressure. And let's see here, we got, I'm going to pop this comment up. So from Matt Klassen, simple answer, because we've appliancized the industry where the problem must be the equipment, while the HVAC system is integrated into the building and the building itself is part of the system as a whole. That's a really good way to begin, Matt. Thank you. So HVAC 2.0, this started off as systematizing doing deep retrofits, or well, we call them comprehensive because they aren't as deep as what we define a deep retrofit to be. A deep retrofit's generally defined as 70% or more energy savings from where the house was before, and that's no joke to actually hit. But you can do some real good without being that deep. So that's where we began. So Ted and I are deep into the building science and the home performance side of things. But the problem is, it is not a repeatable or teachable thing. There's only a few people out there that are really good at it. They can only do a handful of projects a year. I was one of them. And that doesn't end up mattering. So we needed to zoom out. How can we get it so that at every HVAC install, better equipment and some form of testing or paths forward to the home performance upgrades is offered? And that is a lot of what the HVAC 2.0 technical sales process does. So it is a sales process, but it's a technical sales process. All of us will be annoyed here if we just call it a sales process, because that doesn't encapsulate it. But it is key that there's a sales process, because if the work doesn't sell, it doesn't matter. And that's where we get into something that we say, which is knowledge unapplied is useless. So we don't want to have useless knowledge. We want to actually see work get done. But in the meantime, the average install is abysmal. Okay, let's talk just a touch on mindset, because this is part of how we think about things. And for anybody that's watched the show in the past, you know that we talk about this. So, not my circus, not my monkeys. It is a wonderful Polish saying. And the last clause is not my problem. Not my circus, not my monkeys, not my problem. And another way to look at it is not my money, not my problem. And this is a hard change to make sometimes in our own heads, because we want to help our clients. But if we take their problems on ourselves, we end up taking responsibility for something that A, we don't have control over, and B, we aren't getting paid for. And if you don't hit both of those, don't take responsibility for stuff. Jeff?
Yeah, and it's not caring more than the other person cares. So yes, you got to keep that in mind too. That's definitely part of that mindset.
It's such a hard thing to do, isn't it?
Yep. Because we all want to care more. We all want to do everything that we can, but we got to take a step back sometimes and just reel that in and understand, what are we doing? It's not my money. It's not my problem. We can't care more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a hard thing, because like you know what they need to do in a lot of cases. I mean, most of us can walk into an equipment room and have a pretty good idea of what size system that duct system can handle. And we can walk the house and have some idea of what the house might need and what size equipment might be correct. But we only have an idea. We're still guessing until we collect more data. But we have an idea. You give me a split level and I'm going to be like, let's look for the chases, because they're probably leaky as hell. And I bet there's a 5 or 10 degree split between the different sections of the house. It's just, it's there, and you have an idea of what to do to fix it. You have to figure out what that house needs. But if the client doesn't buy it, it doesn't matter. And then if you care more, you end up giving them a better job than you charge for. And that's a way to go out of business. Ask me how I know this. I did that doing insulation contracting a decade ago. So don't do that. Not my money, not my problem. And if you can keep this in your own mind, it's really helpful, because this is not your money that you're spending, and it's not your problem, it's theirs. And so it's a key mindset shift to make, but it's hard. So if you fail at this, I fail at it still all the time.
So I talked to Matt C today.
Okay.
And he said that he got beyond the paywall in the onboarding, the HVAC 2.0 onboarding, and a lot of things started falling into place for him.
Nice.
So you've done a really nice job creating that onboarding course. And it really, like this slide right here, seems to really click for people, particularly if they're doing the onboarding course, because, you know, the not my money, not my problem thing probably should come after the offer and decline. I mean, it needs to come before, because you got to be ready for it, but it doesn't really make sense until you get to the after. And I think that's part of what he was saying is like a lot of these things, they sort of like you can stick them up on a wall, but how they all interconnect ends up coming later. So this is like, if this doesn't make sense right out of the gate, that's totally okay. That's the way it is for most people.
I fought not my money, not my problem for the longest time. But the way that you do it is this: it's offer and decline. So you help them understand what their paths forward, what their options are, what the risks and rewards are of different pathways are. And then you say, you can do this, you can do this. Here's your price for each one. Which one would you like? And you just took the responsibility for that particular issue and set it on their shoulders. And guess what? People tend to make good decisions. Not always, a lot.
Breaking that down even more is kind of a physical reminder that you could do is before you actually go into a home or you go see a client is literally leave your wallet in the car. And every time that you do that, that's just that physical reminder to yourself. It's not my money. It's not my problem. Offer, let them choose.
Yeah,
Treat them like an adult.
that ends up keeping your mind free for what is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And your responsibility is to be the guide.
Mm-hmm.
And as the guide, there are a number of things that you really have to do at that meeting in order to fully responsibly avoid responsibility. And if you're getting distracted by being a hero or by worrying about whether the people have the money or they don't have the money or what money they have, you're distracted from this aspect of it. And the responsibly avoiding responsibility is a really crucial part. You can't responsibly avoid responsibility without at least doing a number of offers to get the people educated enough to be responsible for their own decision.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to Matt, it was like, he said, well, so I said no to a client who wanted AeroSeal today. I said, well, so let's talk about that a little bit. Did you do right by them by saying no? And he's like, well, you know, the equipment was this and that, and it was just really a bad solution. And so he just sort of escorted me out of the house. I'm like, but weren't you the person probably best equipped to help that person understand not only what the problem is behind his inaccurate diagnosis of the solution, but also educate him? And if he still insisted on AeroSeal, shouldn't you have made the money of doing that? And then later on been able to help him when he realized that wasn't the right solution? And so a lot of this stuff is very hard, and it takes a little while.
It's
anyway.
really hard. And then Joel Becker has this great comment from a couple minutes ago. Most of the guys in this industry outside of our bubble of excellence are pretty upfront about hating math and science. There's definitely a good chunk of that. And that's part of where I'm a big fan of what are called heuristics, which is kind of go, no go simplifications of various things. Like that's a slide I forgot to put in here is of badass HVAC. The big air drop that we like doing, where you put the media filter horizontal in the drop and you make the drop 25 by 25 or something along those lines. So it's huge. That gives you huge static pressure benefits. You get much better filtration out of it. The system gets quieter. The fan uses a whole lot less power to run, all by just saying, all right, we're going to make the drop the same size as the filter. So wherever the return plenum is, like, so if you're in an attic, it'll be sideways, or a crawl space, it'll be sideways. But you make that the same size as the filter that you're putting on, and all kinds of things get better. That's a heuristic. Is that perfect? No, there's no math involved. But if you run a 25 by 25, or if you make the 28 by 31 your default, you solve all kinds of things, and you don't have to do any math. You just have to figure out how do we physically fit that filter into the space. But yeah,
Well,
this is key.
I think part of this also lies in his quotations of bubble of excellence. There's no reason to sit and chase excellence because it's never actually going to take place in what in 0.0001 jobs that you ever do in your entire life. All of the jobs that you ever do are going to fall in between the worst option and the science project house is perfect option. It's going to fall somewhere in between that. So rather than thinking about going, okay, how do we make everything perfect and excellent and have like these superstar people who everybody that works at the company are, just mathematical geniuses and they understand the science and everything and the whys behind it. Why not go, okay, if within a company, if you have a handful of people who are that good, they're, quote unquote, excellent, use those people, leverage those people, and go, okay, how are we going to take this and create a process and create these systems of, installs, checklists, and things like that, that if you can hand to someone who doesn't have to understand the science, but they can just follow steps, you can dramatically improve the installs that we see out in the field. Because, like you just said, if you just go, okay, we're going to use a 20 by 25 filter, and for the return, we're going to make it at least 20 by 25. You don't have to know any math. There's no thinking to that. It's just go do it.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have, okay, well, what about situations where it doesn't fit? Well, sure. That's where your lead install guy, who's going to need to know more than the people under him, can kind of address small issues like that. But you can really boil down all this super complex stuff that we all like to, boast about how we understand all this. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much. Like if you can't take that knowledge and then leverage it in a way to where other people can use it and they don't have to go through all of the headache that you had to go through to learn it and still give very similar results, that's astronomically better than what's currently being done. But it's like, as an industry, most people don't care, so we just do terrible work. And then the other small group, we all sit and ramage about how things need to be absolutely perfect and just not do anything at all about it. And so we're just left with the same results. It's like, okay,
there's a lot of opportunity in the middle, isn't there?
exactly. And so it's like, okay, well, how about this? If we can't get to 100%, what if we just settled for 70% at first and then worked our way up to 80%? And if we settled at 85% on, on all installs that we ever do, I'm fine with that. If you've got just a couple of here and there issues, well, that would be astronomically better than what we see in the field right now.
Yeah, especially if you offered the better options to the clients and they chose poorly.
The other
And
mindset portion.
this is another piece that we probably should talk about. Is the offering better equipment. And like, I don't think we can really blame the installers, because if the installer is sent out to install a 5-ton heat pump on a 2,000 square foot house with 2.5-ton ductwork, what the heck is the installer going to do about that? And unfortunately, this is so common that really you're teaching your installers not to care. It's not the installers. That's self-preservation on the installer's part to learn not to care. If the salesperson is doing terrible design.
So it all goes back to caring more than the next person, because if the installers start to care, so it just creates this ripple effect, right? Then it stops the job, and then you piss everybody off, and it all goes back. So, yeah, I'm with you. You don't blame the installer. It's a collective effort. And like Tanner said, do we go after the 1%? Do we want the science project in every home?
Well,
or do we want to go after the 85?
Except at the sales step, I think the opportunity to dramatically improve everything downstream is by improving the sales step.
There's so much there. Yeah. If you jam in an oversized system that's wrong for the house, I don't care how you install it, it's not going to work. You don't have the ductwork for it.
What's justified is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard thing. I think too, back to Brian, who's a friend of mine. He's an installer for Burton Sheet Metal, but I used to know him when he was an energy auditor for the Dominion gas program in Cleveland. And he really, really cared. And he just got pushed from one job to the next and always felt rushed. And like it burned him up. So like he was kind of messed up mentally sometimes doing that job. It's really hard. Boss is calling, why is the job not done? Why is the job not done? Because it's still wrong. Because I got to set it up, whatever it is. And yeah, there's so many things that are involved here. Because heating and cooling services, trying to get my mouse over here. Come on. Lack of installers is a huge piece of the problem too. So, and this to me is also challenging because like I think about modern cars and how often you have to work on stuff. I just hit a deer in my dumb van a couple of weeks ago. It totaled it out. So now I bought a truck. But that van had 172,000 miles on it. I wasn't going to do anything, and we were going to drag a camper to the other side of the country with 172,000 miles on it. Would you have done that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or 40 years ago? Heck no. That thing would have been in the junkyard. It was done for. So we don't have to work on stuff as much anymore, and we don't have shop classes anymore. We don't have auto mechanics class, and you don't have to work on stuff as much. So as a society, we have less mechanical ability than we once did, which makes it harder to attract kids to the trade as well. Plus,
well, the onboarding for this is it's really terrible for the like. We always talk about how nobody's coming into the industry, and it's like, well, yeah, because we're not doing anything to try to get people in the industry in a good way. Like, I mean, everybody that's ever worked on a large commercial job site, I mean, it's not fun. Like, it's hot as crap. You're sweating your face off, and you've got a bunch of angry, grumpy people yelling at you as to what to do. Well, nobody's going to look at that and go, oh, that's what I want to do. Because right now, the only way that people really try to lure people in is they hold a bunch of money up and go, oh, come over here, come work for me. And then they come work, and then they just get ragged out for 2 weeks and go, holy crap, this stuff sucks. And so there's not like any sort of process to really onboard people to kind of get people up to speed, because we all know, like us that's been in the industry for a little while and you've done it, you realize, okay, guess what? Sometimes things are going to be hard and sometimes they're going to be easy. It's going to be up and down, and you kind of get a feel. Well, somebody that comes in don't understand that, and they work in your tough time 2 weeks and go, oh, this is what it's like all the time. Well, I would rather go do something else. This is terrible. But when it's all problems really come down to the people who are affected by the problems. They don't want to stop and self-reflect and go, how is it that I'm screwing this up as well? And what can I do? They just want to point fingers and go, oh, well, no, here's the problem. No, here's the problem. It's like, well, there's problems everywhere, but what are you going to do to try to actually help solve this?
Yeah, and it's so hard. I mean, Tom makes the point here, too. Installers are not the one to blame. It comes back on the owner of the company. The biggest turd is on top, and the turds roll downhill. So there's some truth there, too. So some company owners really care, and some not so much. So there's a company not far from where I am, where the guy that I work with retired. He still does tons of work on the side, basically full time, with the amazing name of Bruce Willis. So Bruce Willis installs ducts. How cool is that? He's like, I'm so glad he's getting older. I love to hear about it all the time. How's it going with Nakatomi Plaza? But Bruce really gives a damn about good installs. But he worked for a company before where the owner was saying, we do more installs around here than anyone. He's like, I don't know about quality. He's like, I said nothing about quality. I just said the quantity of installs. And we have such a focus on that across the industry. And now we have, I mean, there's all these different factors. Like, which one do we put in? I don't mean this to be a rant or anything, but we're just kind of putting out all of these different things. But we're moving from PSCs to ECMs. And you typically get, as Jeff has found repeatedly, about a 30% bump in static pressure when you change. So you might have been borderline okay before, but now you eat the motor if you keep the same size equipment afterwards. And you move to higher SEER equipment, which doesn't dehumidify as well, so you get less happy clients at the end. Like there's all of these different challenges in this just mess that are coming in. Abhi, do you remember we did like the 4 horsemen of the HVACalypse. There was a
Oh,
which
oh
what's
yeah.
name? What were they? Do you remember? Can you go look them up?
Yeah. I can bring them up, but I also just kind of know it off the top of my head. I think it would be useful to have it in front of me. But so I think the number one thing which I think people are bringing up in the comments is skills shortage, right? Trades as a career choice is undervalued in a society where disdain for the under-credentialed is the last acceptable prejudice. I've heard you talk about this many times. And so it's like, it's not that you're struggling to recruit, retain, and train talent. It's just talented people don't want, or seemingly don't want to enter into the industry with the in as many numbers as the industry needs to fill. I think I've seen numbers saying people saying for every 6 people getting out, only one person is coming in. So that's number one. Second is the commoditization or the Walmartization of HVAC. Someone else brought that up. It's like when you're, selling on price and competing on price and not value, and there's no distinguishing attributes between different contractors. Every contractor is the same. It just sets up a race to the bottom. Everyone, including homeowners, loses. And you're just, margins are shrinking, and when margins shrink, you have less time to do training, less time to do any kind of development, right? Less time to do any kind of onboarding, and it's a process that's it's a cyclical process that feeds onto itself. Business model whiplash from stop and go funding, just trying to chase incentives and rebates, and we've done shows on this. We've done an
Yeah, it was
entire
a
episode
policy
or
thing.
two
Yep.
on this thing. And then the last thing is just a cultural decline of craftsmanship and tinkering and maintenance and upkeep, and no one really values someone spending time to do design custom solution. It's a double humpback problem getting more and more pronounced every year, because people don't
Yeah.
really value maintenance and don't really do maintenance contracts and things like that. So things break during the two warmest or two coldest weeks of the year, and the days of this season and then in the winter season are the hardest, and there's a lot of burnout among HVAC techs who are who are just doing 18-hour shifts for weeks on end and stuff like that. So those were
That's
the
a good
four
summary. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and what we're talking about here is episode 3 of a podcast Avi and I did together called Boundary Spanners. About 2 years ago, we did that, so it was more policy focused than anything. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess. So, and in the YouTube comments, you can find the link to that. And I like Ryan hopping in here, Ryan Kerr. Most won't change until they feel or understand the pain they cause themselves. They won't feel their pain when it's always someone else's fault, as if they can do no wrong. So yeah, finger pointing isn't helpful here either. That's what makes this so complicated. Like let's change this one thing and it will make all of this better. There is no one thing. It doesn't exist. We need to do like 20 things simultaneously and pretty decent. To have it all work. I mean, that's part of what we've been trying to peel the onion on for HVAC 2.0. Like we started out at that advanced home performance, doing these kind of killer projects, and we backed it off and figured out, oh, well, a lot of houses really just need the right HVAC system. But to know what the right HVAC system is, we need to know blower door and past energy use and thermostat set points and some other piece of information to really size their equipment right and have an idea of whether HVAC was going to fix it or not. But that's too much either, because most people have a broken furnace or a broken air conditioner they just want it freaking fixed as soon as it can be fixed. And so we have to do our best to try and educate those folks that have their hair on fire because something's broken, that there are consequences to their decision. And the most likely consequence of choosing incorrectly is they will have to either live with whatever the mediocrity is they get or pay to replace the system again. And if we don't do a good job of setting that up, we might be on the hook for that replacement. So we want to be sure to responsibly avoid responsibility so we don't get that. So Jeff, actually, you want to talk about warranty? Since that's kind of been your bread and butter for, 5 years? What happens when you put the wrong system in to profitability?
Yeah, what happens when you put the wrong system in, don't responsibly avoid that responsibility, for sure, is you're eating a lot of shit. And that's from warranty calls, service calls, call after call after call, all the way to, again, you get me involved at that point, and we're going to start all over, and do it right. And guess whose expense it's going to be at?
Whoever ends up not having offer declined and responsibly avoided responsibility.
100%, every single time.
Matt also talked today about how one of the things you set up at your previous place of employment seems to be really helping them avoid, or like that whole warranty thing isn't growing. Like, you shrunk it last year, and it's for the most part been resolved
On the service side, right?
on the service side. Yeah.
And why is that? What was his supposition?
He thinks it's because people have been asking the 4 questions. And in fact, he had one example of a guy who was asked the 4 questions, and he went out there and reviewed it with him. The guy's like, well, no, nobody asked me that. And it's like, well, right here, and here's your signature, right? And so it's working. And he also is saying that he's starting to understand, among all other things, sort of the order of operations and why you put things in the order that you put them. So it was a really nice phone call.
That's fantastic. By the way, the 4 questions for anybody who's listening and doesn't know, we start with asking clients 4 questions, and it's a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no problem, 10 being a big problem. Are there any rooms that don't cool well? Any rooms that don't heat well? Does anybody have any respiratory challenges? And are there any moisture problems in the house? And their score from that leans them to either a free quote or a comfort consult within the 2.0 system. But regardless, you could ask those questions anyway. And if people tell you there's no problems, and then they buy a crappy system, and then they're like, well, wait a minute, my comfort sucks. Well, you didn't tell me the comfort sucks. How am I supposed to know?
Or if they decide they just want a free quote and they had a 24 score on their comfort quiz, then you say, are you sure you want a free quote? Because it sounds like you have comfort problems to solve. Yeah. Well, now you want those comfort problems solved after the fact. You're in a big hurry because you were out air conditioning, and now you realize the house is just as frustrating or even more frustrating than it was before, and you want that to be my problem. That's not the way this works. As you recall, when I came out here the first time, I asked you these questions, you gave me these answers, and you chose to go with a free quote at that time, and you specified the equipment, not me. So what you're telling me is, at this point, you want to reconsider the comfort console. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
And that's really the only, you only give them the A or B, because they can't say, oh, no, I want you to replace the equipment for me for free. Well, I'm not the one that specified this particular equipment. So
Right. All right. Well, I want to shift gears and go into the metric side of things a little bit, just to show how crummy the average HVAC install is based on just static pressure. So we'll look at the third item here. So things that we think could help a lot here: client education, offering the right system to every client, whatever that might be, getting your static pressure between 0.08 and 0.3 whenever possible. And oftentimes it's flat out not going to be possible. It just isn't, because people don't want to listen. So all you can do is offer education. If they consume it, it's up to them. Evacuate below 200 microns. This is something that could be done on every job, I think, without a huge amount of extra effort. And
that should be extremely easy. It's not even this can be done. I mean, if you're doing a new line set, there is absolutely zero reason you should not be able to get under 100 every single time. Yeah. Any excuse as to why you can't get there is nothing but an excuse. Now, if you've got, you're only replacing part of it. You're reusing a line set that has a lot of mineral oil in it, things like that. Okay, sure, you might not be able to get to that low, but for most systems where you are replacing copper, zero reason as to why you can't get to 200. I mean, that's an easy target.
Yeah. So fingers crossed, and then charging properly to line set length, which isn't that hard. Although, comment here, Heating and Cooling Services Inc. That's the problem. The companies that ramrod and do volume are the ones that are doing the majority of the installs. Yes, this is a really hard thing. Tanner, what are you playing with?
Oh, nothing. Definitely not a honey badger.
You will get that micron reading below 200.
Let me re-say that again. You're going to get it below 200 and you're going to like it.
You're going to smile while doing it. You're going to come back tomorrow and you're going to be thrilled.
Tactical evacuations.
But
That's a great company name. Consumers won't understand it, or they'll think it's something else.
yeah, who knows what that'll come with. Anyway, yeah, but the other challenge is the big companies that are doing high volume, they're doing 2 installs a day with the crew, and like, just good luck doing some of the stuff. I mean, to a degree, maybe they can get the thing set up and then the install guy comes the next day and actually evacuates it properly. But this is a challenge that in a lot of ways, those of us that care have to figure out, how do we actually grow our companies in a way where we can actually do these better installs profitably and have a significant market share.
How many companies are truly doing 2 complete systems combo replacements a day that anybody here knows of?
I can think of a few that they just rush through that way. They're to the point. I mean, their quote unquote time frame for an install is like 4 or 5 hours.
Was that a combo or just really for a combo?
Yes. Well, not for, which we don't do just a ton of furnace ACs, so it's mostly heat pumps, which is a little bit easier. But yeah, I know of a couple of people who are like, oh yeah, I can knock them out in 3-4 hours, no problem. And
Yeah.
I mean, now if you're just connecting stuff and turning it on, well, sure, you can do that maybe. But bigger companies, I think that's where when you start really forcing, unless you have a ton of people on site doing it, if you got a bunch of people doing it, well, sure, you can knock things out a lot faster. But I mean, there's just no way you can do it properly and it be good. Now, I guess the thought after that is going to be, okay, well, if there are companies out here that are doing that, how do you compete with that? Okay, company 59 Minute Air, they're over here knocking out 2 installs a day and, charging $10,000 a pop. Well, how can I go compete with that when they're getting things done so fast? Like, that's what the clients like. Well, do the clients like all the callbacks? Do they like the new problems that they didn't have initially? It's like there's other ways of kind of leveraging against that type of thing, because when you do crappy work is going to come back to bite you. The only question is it a rinse repeat type business plan, or is it I plan to keep the customer forever business plan, and what plan is likely to last the longest amount of time?
Yeah. I was just curious because I know a lot of large companies that, unless it's a high side or a low side, furnace or AC only, they're not doing 2 installs a day. So I was just curious.
Yeah. Well, I also think a lot of that also gets when private equity starts to get involved. You have people who don't have a technical understanding, and their mindset to a lot of this is just ramping everything up. It's do things faster, do it for more money, do it, and it's, to them, it comes off very easily. And so you start having, and that's the couple of companies that I'm thinking of. That's what happened in that situation where somebody else come in, they bought the company, and now they're trying to implement new business practices, and which the quality wasn't good to begin with, but it's falling off even more so. And That's what I've kind of noticed.
So if that falls off, at what point do they start getting eaten alive by their warranty reserve? I mean, we heard that there's one company maybe charging 4% on warranty reserve, and when I was in it, it was like 2 to 3. 3 seemed like a lot.
Yeah, 4 to me, from a lot of the issues that we're hearing about, sounds like wishful thinking and not putting everything into that category that belongs.
So it might even be 5
or 6
4,
or 7.
4. So that just seems like it at some point it presents a tremendous opportunity. Like, crappier work costs the company more than doing it well.
Yeah, it's tough. Big old 4-ton mic.
I guess it just
When Jeff
depends
used to
on how
work.
you're accounting, right? If your accounting is paying attention or not.
Yeah. I mean, they just kind of play the insurance game. If I do 10 installs and only 2 come back, well, then let me just adjust my pricing to compensate for those 2. I'll just go give them a new system for free, and we'll just keep on going about what we're doing.
Such mediocrity. I love this comment from the Facebook user. Companies that do 2-a-days are our favorite people. We get so much work from them.
And companies that do RNC, go ahead and throw that into that category too.
What's that? Can you define that?
RNC, residential new construction.
Oh, yeah.
They keep us busy.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, how many systems have you ripped out that are like 3 years old or less?
Tons, but they only give, especially on new homes, but they only give that 1 year, 2 year warranty. It's all downhill from there. They know what they're doing.
Yeah,
We'll just get a home warranty. It'll be fine.
Only the best companies do home warranty.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they pay so much money, so I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't. Everybody should get on home warranty today.
Yeah, it's tough. So
everybody's going to hear just that snip, Tanner. Thank you. They're going to hear that one piece. They took that nugget, and Tanner told me to go buy a home warranty with his gun in his hand. I had to believe him. I mean, come on now. I was scared.
And a honey badger. Come down.
I call it an IQ test.
So, this is a good point. Heating and cooling systems, they've always been around, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and they get almost $20,000 for 2-ton split heat pump or gas pack change out in 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, it's so.
Is that single stage?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Is it like the crappy stuff, or is that the good stuff?
Well, if he says a gas pack, that's a rooftop.
Right.
Yeah,
it's like a yard furnace.
Oh, there comes Ted with his redneck terminology.
Sorry.
Out rednecking us down here in Alabama.
From upstate New York, no less.
New York. Well, I want to touch on a couple of numbers here, and then we'll come back around to this because I do have a couple of things to kind of throw out there. This is a duct pressure chart. We're probably going to adjust this a little bit because I've got yellow from 0.3 to 0.5, and that might be a little too aggressive because a lot of people just aren't going to care. So that's still green, but like my sweet spot on static pressure and inches of water column still 0.08 to 0.3. And we very seldom break that in our installs. If you downsize a system by ton and a half, sometimes 2 tons, and you reduce your airflow, all of a sudden your ductwork's right sized. But you need to know some stuff before you want to reduce that far, because that's pretty scary the first couple times you do it. Ask me how I know, having done electrifications in a cold climate.
This also brings the question, Nate, because a lot of people have asked, when you say that 0.5, right, what type of system are you talking about? Air handler, gas furnace, what type?
Combo. Yeah, well, actually, we're going to get to that because I've got DOE numbers in here. This is from, I did a video of one weird thing that's killing furnaces and air conditioners. That's actually, there's a 90-second video that's really short for consumers to at least let them know that this is a problem and I relate it to blood pressure. But this is from the deeper slide deck that goes into the full explanations. But basically, when you get above 0.5, you're probably okay, but somewhere around 0.7 seems to be the consensus where ECMs are fairly likely to bite it early. So you might get 3 years, you might get 5 years, but you may not get the full life out of that fan. And you get over an inch, and I think we all know that's a problem. And there's a lot of systems over an inch. So speaking of which, this is a data set that Jim Bergmann, actually his daughter Val, was kind enough to hand over to me. It's 800 systems. That's pretty nationally representative. And I chopped out the very high and the very low. There were some numbers that didn't make sense. So static pressures of 0.001. Yeah, not going to happen. I think we can all agree. And anything that was over like 1.8 or 1.9, I threw out because I thought that might have been bad data as well. There were a couple that were like 3 or 4 inches. I'm like, I don't think residential systems will do it. So I don't think that's a real number. But the DOE, when they changed to ECM fan motors for furnaces in July of 19, they were assuming, and I've gotten this next slide from an ACHR article, that systems were going to run between 0.3 and 0.65 inches of static. The reality is 47% of systems are above 0.7. So 47% are in the danger zone. 70% are above 0.5, which is your most common manufacturer spec on like a furnace or an air handler. It's not all of them, but that's your most common spec. So here's the ACHR news, and this shows the DOE reference system criteria. So Jeff, this answers your question. So units with an internal evaporator coil, they assumed that they would run half an inch. So that's an air handler, basically. Units designed to be paired with an evaporator coil. So there's your furnace and air conditioner, 0.65. And this one got just a laugh out of me when I saw it. Units designed to be installed in a mobile home, 0.3. I don't know what y'all are smoking, but I want some.
I think they meant 1.3.
They left
Like
the one off. It was a
0.3?
typo.
Yeah, seriously.
Don't they have special furnaces so because they're expecting them to have super high static?
100% they do.
Yeah. So what's this?
Wrong?
I mean, I was thinking of another word that starts with R, but we'll go with wrong.
Can't say that. Can't say that. No, reel it in. Nate, keep going. Nate, next.
There was an episode of Home Improvement years ago where Tim's wife, she knew she was wrong. She's like, so if I'm right, what does that make you? And she's like, really sorry? He kept pushing, and she kept saying something other than wrong. So I think maybe that's the DOE's answer here too. Really sorry? So this is the curve of static pressure systems. So for those of you that are watching or are listening later, the vast majority of this bell curve is happening in between about 0.4 and 0.9. And these are actual data from systems that were measured in the field. My strong gut, by the way, is that reality is actually probably a fair amount worse than this, because these are companies that were measuring, which means somebody was paying some attention. So the odds of it even being this good are kind of low in my mind. There's no way to prove it. There's no counterfactual, but the odds are this is worse. So 70%.
Yeah, we're finding out that this isn't being measured. It's not being measured by most of the techs out there. And so if it's not being measured by the service techs, then it's very unlikely it's being measured by the install guys, because those guys are sort of at the lowest. They're the first rung, right?
Yep. Yeah, all this is a pain. There's more good comments coming in. I've been ignoring them for a moment here. But returns from financing a higher volume of low-quality products are greater than losses from warranty payouts. That's the general bet. And that
we think that's not going to remain true.
This is an assumption that is probably going to turn out really wrong. And so, like, if you have built a company that does this, sell it, get your private equity money. And stick them with a bill, because sooner or later this is a significant debt that is going to come to bear. So that's.
Well, I was just having a conversation with someone not long ago. Well, actually this evening. And we were talking about that. And are they also banking on the amount of people that are going to sell their home after they purchase a system to then go to subsequent warranties, which is only 5 years versus what it used to be, where you could actually still get the full manufacturer warranty. I think a lot of manufacturers started changing it that way as well.
Yeah,
So
that
they
has
took
happened.
that data.
Although Florida just made it so that it's the warranty regardless of owner. It's on the system.
Even going over what the manufacturer says it's going to be on a subsequent. Can they do that?
Well, so yeah, if the equipment has a 10-year warranty from the manufacturer, but it's not supposed to transfer owners, Florida now requires that it transfers owners, and that's
So
Oh, that's awesome.
contract.
Was that from the
very
contractor that's going to have to eat it, or is it the actual manufacturer? Because the manufacturer's going to eat that shit.
Well, they're about to, because it only happened a couple of months ago, so there's no
Perfect.
real data
Love
yet.
it.
That's
It's-
awesome.
It's
Let's
brand
get it
new.
going.
Pressure on the manufacturers to put pressure on the companies.
Good news.
So unfortunately, Jeff can't talk about this.
Then why are you bringing it up?
Other than to say, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Boy, is that a good idea.
Legislating quality always works.
Oh boy, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation and mess of why the average installs suck. Well, we'll make a law for that. That'll work. The Carolinas, you have to have 2 systems, upstairs and downstairs. So great, you just made it so it's twice as expensive when it comes to replacement time, because you have 2 systems to do instead of 1. So yeah,
double
and they're no better. They're no better. And in fact, usually they're worse because they got equipment in attics. So
Well,
they
in attics
basically the
and-
equipment is outdoors.
Well, if you have a 2,500 square foot house and you're putting 2-3 tonners in, 400 square feet a ton, like it's how are you going to right size equipment if you're doing 2 systems in most homes?
Absolutely.
Well, just variable speed and 2 is better. I mean, what's the saying? 2 is
Lean into
1,
that
1 is
variable
none.
speed answer.
Yeah. And don't forget they ramp down.
That variable speed will take care of all of it.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, that 5 ton that ramps down to 1.5 tons when the load's only like 2. This is going to go great.
Yeah, and you don't even have to get up in the attic. Just put a mini split in. Just throw it on the wall, turn it on. It works great.
Yeah. So back to static pressure, or duct pressure, as we call it for homeowners, because explaining external static pressure is like having to explain the punchline of a joke after you told it. Like, well, this is dumb. Nobody laughed. And now this took too long. So you can explain duct pressure pretty easily. But 70% of systems are above 1/2 inch, and that's manufacturer spec on most systems. So 70% of systems are out of spec on this one metric. We're not talking airflow. We're not talking charge. None of these other things are we getting into. But I had good data on this one metric. So again, well over half or over 1/2 inch. Let's see, 0.7 is where the danger begins. That's 47%. Now, Jeff taught me this one. When you change from a PSC to an ECM motor, on average, Jeff, what was the increase that you saw?
30%.
So if you go in with a system and you measure it at 0.7, you end up at 0.9 or 1.
You're going to be pretty damn close to 1.
Yeah.
Don't get a dirty filter.
Oh, but 1 inch will do you fine. 16 by 20, right?
Yeah. No, 14 by 20.
Okay.
big. 40 by
I'm
20.
sorry. Yeah, that's so overkill. My apologies. May I be whipped 1,000 times with a wet noodle. So, and when you get above 0.7, this is thanks Michael Hausch for this one. High static, and it's Pac-Man with a couple of ECM motors. Nom 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 nom. That's high static. Just eats ECMs for breakfast. So we want to avoid that. But half of systems, 47%, are in that range. And when you get over an inch, you're looking at very likely failure in 1 to 3 years. Would everybody here agree with that? Of the fan motor?
Yes.
Yeah, I usually explain it. It's not if, it's when.
Yeah. And shoot, who was it that was replacing compressors left and right? Was that you, Jeff? 2 fan motors and 2 compressors. Oh, that was Reedy. He had
I
a
think it was
client
Reedy.
with an oversized system. Yeah, that was last week with his zone system with 6 1-ton zones. And in 3 years, a new house has eaten 2 compressors and 2 fan motors. That's what happens when you run over an inch. This crap doesn't like it.
But what about these new V coils, these micro channels?
That's going to
What
make all
about
the problems go away. Duh.
Of course.
I mean, you see, the thing was they come out with ECMs first, and they were like, we're going to solve all the problems with this. And then they realized, oh, we only figured out half of the problem. That's why it didn't work. So we just need another thing. So they whipped out this new V microchannel coil. So now all the problems are going to go away.
Magic.
So, I mean, everybody likes the sound of a turbo. So everybody's just going to get systems that sound like turbos, and it's going to be great and wonderful.
Yeah, so the ladies of the houses usually love loud HVAC systems, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
That's the best.
F microchannel.
No, come on now. That's no way to be.
Yeah.
My
Thank you
husband can't hear me because the furnace has the same tone as my voice.
Okay, Valley Girl, calm down.
By the way, heating and cooling, thank you for putting the star in there so I can actually show that comment. We try to keep this PG or PG-13. Occasionally we fail, but we try. Tanner would love if I took the reins off. Love. If you go back to episode 2, you see what happens when the reins are off.
Imagine the after show. That's all I gotta say.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah, it's like Jerry's
Let it all build up.
Yeah. Beep, 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 beep.
We all just cross our fingers and hope that the video don't ever get leaked.
Oh, that's exactly it. So this is a really common failure mode. And like even in the 0.7 to 1 range, you've still got a reasonable or high risk of failure of something going out before end of equipment life. So a friend of mine who is in Denver just replaced his 2 heat pumps. They were 8 years old, single stage. He's like, well, they were working hard. And it's a machine. It doesn't care. It's highway miles. My van with 172,000 miles. They got totaled by hitting that deer. That thing was fine. It's a machine. Don't slam them on and off. Don't push them outside their operating parameters. You'll be fine. So it's just wild to me. And yeah, here's Austin Inman comments. I see regularly that systems are short on supply ductwork and way short on return ductwork. Amen, brother. Amen. That's why the bad is around. And people think it's hilarious that it's called a bad. And if that inspires people to install them, great. Because that's one of the ways to fix this. So there's a DOE assumption, and reality is 50% of systems are well above what DOE assumed when they were pushing for the PSC to ECM switch. So in general, I like that idea. I love ECMs. They're quiet. They use almost no power if you give them low static. But boy, you put them against high static, those things whine. They are not happy.
And if anybody has the old DOE charts that show, depending on where you live, the savings that someone's going to have by going to an EC motor, please burn them and throw them away. Please. Nobody needs to see them anymore.
I touched on it a while ago. There was one system that we replaced, and we did our best on the return, but the system was significantly oversized. So on high fan speed, that ECM burned 1,000 watts. On low fan speed, it burned 50. So it was like 300 versus 1,000 CFM, something like that. That was a very unhappy system running on high. So it's a good thing it didn't need to run on high a lot, because it would have eaten itself alive.
It's an awakening.
It was, but I mean, but to deal with this is does anybody know Princess Bride? It's one of my favorite movies, where Princess Buttercup is always asking Wesley for just these stupid things, and he just says, "As you wish." And this is where we need to get to with our clients. So we educate them. We offer them options. One of the big things that we strongly suggest is offer static pressure testing at the sale. Offer it and have them decline it. This is part of the free quote process. So as we get to the launch here of the free quote process, which is forever like a week away, that is in there so that you can offer it to people and they decline it and sign off that they don't want it. That means they assume the risk of that early failure because that ECM is screaming with 1,000 watts. But what you have to get used to is, again, going back to the not my circus, not my monkeys. If you do a good job of educating them, this is your action as you wish. Okay, we'll do that. But they have been offered education, they have been given education, and they have signed off that they understand the ramifications of what they're going for. And the free quote process within 2.0 does these things for you. You just have to walk through a web page, basically. But I've always said that scene always cracked me up. And then we get to what we call responsibly avoiding responsibility. So these are ways that we can deal with the sales side of things, because we're going to have this blame game. Is it the installer's fault? Is it the owner's fault? Is it the homeowner's fault? Whose fault is it? But at the end of the day, if we as professionals are not offering education and helping clients understand what their options are, and they may not take the education, that's fine. Jeff, you've had a couple of those here recently. Nope, let's talk to the hand because the face don't care. All right, sir, sign here. And then when this bites you in the butt in 6 months, I'm going to be like, talk to the face, or talk to the hand, because the face don't care.
I care as much as you care, not more, but as much. And if I don't sell you something, or you don't buy from me, guess what? You're going to buy from someone else. So I'll care as much as you, and I'll take you where you want to go. Right. I'm the guide.
So in our 2 rules of responsibly avoiding responsibility are, if you aren't being paid to take responsibility and you have control over outcomes, don't take responsibility. And this is where the client education is really key. You want to replace your 80K system with an 80K system, even though I can hear your ductwork oil can go boom, boom when the system turns on, so I know you've got like an inch of static. Okay, sign here. So you aren't being paid and you don't have control over fixing that. So that's fine.
It gives you an easy way to deal with clients who are a headache, because everyone has had the situation where, you try to explain something to them and they don't even want to understand it. So it's like, okay, instead of sitting and wasting your time and effort, you just go, okay. So, take your example, Nate, of, if the ductwork's oil can and every time the system turns on and they want the exact same system, and you just go, okay, well, we can do that, but I just want to make sure you're not going to be mad at me that your system still oil cans afterwards. Is that right? And when they say, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want, you go, okay, here, sign here, just so I can remind you this if you try to, mention this later, and we'll go ahead and get you lined up. Yep. I mean, that's so much easier than sitting and trying to convince somebody who does not want to be convinced. And if you do that, I mean, all you're likely to do is just talk yourself out of them buying from you. And if they're going to buy a crappy system, at least the crappy system can be installed well if you do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
at least it's charged right.
Yeah. I mean,
and you did your best on a filter. You threw in a 4-inch, so at least maybe it's a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you think that you're one of the best in your area, if you know it's going to be an improper system installed, who's likely to install that system the best? I mean, if the other Joe Schmoes can't even install a correct system, well, you see the types of jobs that they do with incorrect systems. At least you can kind of go in with, knowledge going, okay, this isn't right, so let me try to do a few things to mitigate it as much as possible. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you're still doing very well by your client, even if they're making stupid decisions, but you got to treat them like an adult. And when you treat people like adults, that means you have to allow them to make dumb decisions.
Yeah, it's like good parenting in a lot of ways. That's going to hurt little Johnny. They go put their hand on the stove anyway. Hurts, don't it? Um, yeah, it's such a tricky thing. So one last point on what we call responsibly avoiding responsibility, and you don't have to use 2.0 to do this. It doesn't matter. It's built into everything we do, but you can do your own education of clients and do this. But remember, this is not shirking responsibility. It's only taking it when the conditions are met, that you're getting paid and you have control. And Jeff, to repeat what you said, and you only care as much as they do. Because some people don't care. That's fine. This was a hard thing. So I struggled with this realization a lot. What you just said, Tanner, of, well, I'll just refuse to do the job. No, you got people, you got family to feed, and you got guys to keep busy. Like, put it in. Just make sure that they sign off, that they understand that when things break, it's on them.
And give clear expectations as to what can happen next. Be like, okay, if you have this oil canning equipment, just so you know, if this does become a problem for you and you do want to fix it, really our best option is to replace this equipment again.
Yep.
If it's all set up that way to where they already know, okay, I'm going to do this thing, I'm expecting problems, and if I do want to fix it, I'm going to have to redo this. They're not going to be coming at your throat going, you told me this was going to work great and you should have made this blah, blah, you eliminate all of that.
Right? Yeah, it's such a challenging thing because so many of these failures that we're talking about start at the sales step. If the sales step is done wrong, there is no recovery.
Yes.
So to do a good technical install, the sales step is critical. And so, I mean, in that case, the other thing is if they're going to keep the same size, what we recommend is your standard install option is a bad, or at least it is a media filter. And it's money off to go to back to what they have, their small drop in their 1-inch filter. Like, we'll do that. We'll take money off. Here's your apples to apples. If you're comparing cheap systems to cheap systems, but is this really what you want? Because there's some risk here. You do? Sign here. And what, as the comedian says, here's your sign. So speaking of which, here's one way to offer this. So this is out of the free quote process. We talk about what we call the 6 functions of HVAC, which that came out of my book, the Home Comfort book, years ago. I was staring at my wife's HVAC system in her crappy little car and thinking, this thing's actually an amazing system. It's got load matching. It's got dehumidification. Runs cold all the time. It's got good mixing in here. It's got filtration. It's got fresh air coming in. Like, this is a really serious system. One might call it badass. So you can offer different things. So like a basic system, you want load matching where the equipment output can match to what the house needs at any given moment. Sorry, single stage, you don't get that. It's not part of the equation. You want to step up to a little better piece of equipment. Yeah, it gets a little bit better. And then you step up to your inverter equipment, and particularly if it's right sized, and you get really good load matching. And that's the single biggest factor in better comfort. You want to have that gentle stream of heat or cool running all the time, not a blast furnace of on or a blast cooler of on in air conditioning mode. And how does each system do a dehumidification? You want a basic system? Higher SEER stuff, 15 SEER is required this year. Pretty bad at dehumidification. Probably going to be significantly worse than your old system. If you want it, I'll put it in, but I want you to be aware that this is a problem. And if this is an issue, we can deal with it. We can add a separate ventilating dehumidifier, or we can rip the system out and replace it again. Or you can run a separate dehumidifier as well, like whatever works. But all of these different things, if you show people, here's the basic system. When you're looking for the cheap system, this is what you're going to get. Are you okay with this? Great, sign here. I'll sell it to you. I'll put it in. But understand that when the results suck, I told you. But the sales step is,
if you buy all the frowny faces,
yep,
you kind of know that it's not going to be great. But you set the level of expectation.
Yeah.
And let adults make decisions about their houses. If somebody makes that decision, it's not up to you to reprimand them or tell them they shouldn't. It's up to you to install it.
Don't judge them. They can make their own choice. By the way, I want to push back on this. So heating and cooling services. So when an HVAC 2.0 contractor does a wham bam, thank you ma'am install because the homeowner wanted it, they're still going to take 2 to 4 times as long as the high volume slammers. I don't know.
Jeff?
I'm going to say it takes the same amount of time for one of my crews to do an install that it does any other system swap out within my company and previous organizations that I've been a part of, or previous people that I've trained.
Okay, can you expand?
Sounds like between those two, that's at least 20,000 leads a year. So that's a lot of install.
One day install 2-man crew for a combo replacement, whatever that may be. It takes the same amount of time to install a bad along with that system, even on one of those like for like replacements. So it doesn't take any longer.
So there you go. So the more advanced, if you sell one of these better installs that has a fresh air duct, and you do the bad and the other pieces, the puzzle, you're gonna have to spend a little bit of time commissioning, although not that much. I mean, Jeff, what does it take you to set up an infinity thermostat? 15 minutes?
15 minutes. And nowadays, if you actually hook it up to a portal, you can do it remotely. That damn easy. Connect to Wi-Fi, we're done.
So yeah, there you go. I need 15 or 30 usually, and oftentimes it's because I'm explaining the customer how to use the thing after I put it in. So it's not necessarily a huge amount of extra time, but in general, yeah, the good installs of the high end stuff here, that can easily push 2 days by the time you're done.
Well, I mean, even on the bottom end equipment, I mean, you shouldn't be like when we talk about these contractors who are just super high volume, spend 4 hours on an install. Well, unless you want to be that contractor, you're not going to compete on the level of speed and everything that they're doing, unless you're just going to bring a bunch of guys. So for me personally, it's just, okay, you want bottom end equipment. Like I'm allowing the customer to make a choice. And if they choose to make poor decision, they're choosing to make poor design choices as to what equipment to put in. That's where the problems, are going to be. It's not going to be that we go in and I go, you know what, since you bought the cheapest one, I'm only going to run my vacuum pump for 10 minutes. Or I'm not going to do this, or I'm just, I'm going to cut corners here and there. It's like, no, I'm still going to do the same quality install. It's just you chose this equipment. You chose this size. You chose to not, do a bad.
Yeah, it doesn't have as much flexibility as all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you're still getting the same quality install. It's just you chose to, omit certain things, which is fine.
Yeah. So it makes other things a lot harder. So like this comment from Chicago HVAC, I deal with mainly commercial, but like what you guys are preaching, why the change? Ductwork has been screwed up forever. Did the PSC just not care about static? And we used to run Kohler coils. Ding, ding, ding. So the PSCs would, I picture a PSC running when it can't flow enough air, like a cartoon character where their feet spin, and then like a second later they go pew when they take off. That's what PSC motors basically do. They just spin in the air and they're burning rubber basically, but they actually use marginally less power when they can't move the airflow they're supposed to. So yes, you get a colder coil out of that because you aren't getting the correct CFM across that coil. Where when you put an ECM in, all of a sudden you do get the correct airflow across the coil, but that ECM is working hard to make that happen.
PSCs are just masters at minding their own business, and ECMs are like, I'm going to try to fix some stuff, and it just doesn't work.
And sounds like some people know.
They break themselves, but yeah, Chicago.
And the refrigerants are warmer because they're trying to only handle sensible, because sensible's easy to remove, and therefore it looks efficient. Whereas latent is expensive to remove because of the state change involved, and it looks expensive.
Exactly.
I think we should add, I think that HVAC needs to have a D in there for dehumidification so people would know that that's not automatic.
Right.
Yeah, boy, it's not. I mean, going back to the IRA episodes that we did a little while back, and just how policy in general is pushing us to worse dehumidification. Yeah, that's challenging. So, like, I have IRA on here as an option because you're probably going to get some people asking about this, and maybe you want to offer that equipment. Be really careful, because the cheapest way to meet the IRA rebate requirements are to use equipment that's good at cold temperature performance and hideous at dehumidification. And in looking at how the program's designed, I honestly, like, I have no idea what rule to put in there to fix it. Like, no clue. And we're stuck with that rule for a decade. So be careful. Like, that's why one of the offerings here for the IRA shows dehumidification as a really serious beet red frowny face, because they suck. I'll sell it to you, but understand that you're probably going to be buying a $5,000-$8,000 ventilating dehumidifier, and then you're going to buy it again because they usually only last 5, 8, 10 years. And your system should last longer than that. Except for you also decline static pressure testing. It's on the moon. So it's going to die in 6 years anyway. So why don't we just replace it now? But if you don't at least give people a heads up of this and it's sold wrong, how can the installer fix this stuff, particularly if they're being pushed to install a new system quickly?
Yep.
Chicago HVAC, you're totally cheating. In commercial, we just changed the motor or pulley configuration to get the airflow and sensible heat ratio.
Yeah.
I love you, man, but I hate you because we can't do that.
Yeah. Come point out where the pulley and the belt's at on these residential units, and we'll get right to it. We'll get right to changing them out.
Yeah. You just order the high static system.
All right, gents, we need to take a shot at someone here. This guy was on the other day, and he's a punk. He's open for work, everyone, by the way. Open for work. Stick with the basics.
I wonder why. I think he just got through his basic classes.
Yeah, he made a bunch of comments, and it was psychrometrics. Do you know psychrometrics? Psychrometrics. What about psychrometrics? Absolutely no detail. Nothing.
What about psychrometrics? What about what are we talking about here?
Well,
ripping off the
answer to everything.
Yeah, right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, ripping off. Or we got this one. This is bees blaming the homeowner. You out of your mind. Spin air. You don't have a clue. Dude, crawl under your rock. Go back. Peace out.
I'm just trying to understand what it is he's even saying. I mean, he
Me
said
too.
stay the basics. Well, I mean, grammar's.
He's using words he just didn't quite learn
Spelling?
yet.
Yeah.
God.
These are fancy words I heard in my class. Did they make me look smart? I think they make me look smart.
Incorrect.
I like to use big words because they make me sound more
Educated.
more thermodynamic. There we go.
Well done, Ken.
There we
Well
go.
done.
Nailed it.
Yeah, it is funny to be like, you're ripping people off. Holy cow! Have you been listening to anything that we're saying? We're trying to figure out how do we actually improve all this and deal with all the different factors and like largely improve the sales side of things, because so many mistakes get made there.
This is what we're all trying to figure out is how do we fix the industry?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
part of what we think fixes it is by slowing down, educating the consumer so that they can be an adult at the table when it comes to decision making.
Yep.
And then allowing them to make their decisions. And then doing good work profitably and doing it well enough that you don't have a whole lot of callbacks, and doing it well enough that the homeowner chooses you and you have higher closing ratios. Because the more profitable you can be by improving your numbers, the numbers that you already have, if you can improve the numbers that you already have by having higher closing ratios, higher margins,
Higher
then
tickets.
you can create pressure on the rest of the industry to do better work too. And we think part of that can be made up with warranty reserve. Fixing the warranty reserve and not burning so much money on callbacks is an opportunity for disruption.
Yeah, it definitely is.
We don't think the losses to warranty reserves are being measured accurately. We think they're being hidden in a lot of places, either intentionally or unintentionally. And so there's disruptive savings in doing better work and setting expectations before the install.
Yep. Well, and the other nice thing is if you can maintain decent margins, this is where I really like what Billy Stevens of Sarah talks about. Make your company as efficient as it possibly can, because that doesn't require raising prices to increase margins, and use that money to train people coming up from nothing. And a lot of this is, I mean, I would love to train my daughter how to change oil. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to have a vehicle that needs its oil changed. And so like there's just this lack of mechanical ability. So it used to be like my dad taught me how to change points. It's been a long time, but he taught me how. That sort of stuff isn't taught anymore. So we have to start with a lot of kids that are oftentimes at a remarkably low level. So if they have a good attitude, but they have some mechanical aptitude, but they have very little mechanical knowledge, that is expensive to train them up. But we need more people to be doing this, and it's best if you can train them on the right ways and with better habits, so that they become better technicians as they move on. So there's all of these different things. I mean, we need to sell the stuff right. We need to sell the right stuff. We need to have it installed right. We need to bring enough people into the industry so that they are excited about this new career, and it is a legitimate career. It's not a job. This is a place.
And they need to enjoy it and be happy and not be stressed out, and they need to be able to sleep well at night. I love this, and I think that ties in really nice to the interview you did with Austin. Austin, you still on here?
Yeah, that's a great video you just posted, Ted.
Austin commented earlier, so he was here for a little bit, and this is an interview that Nate did with Austin this week, and then there was an interview that Abhi actually did with Ronnie. I'll try and go find that and post it, and it's about doing, and I think Matt talked about it today too. It's about not having to worry about what's in your rearview mirror. It's about being able to sleep at night.
Nate, could you go back to the slide where you had those 4 or 5 bullet points about, how to fix?
Yeah. These are a couple of things, and it shouldn't be metrics. This slide sucks.
No, it's okay. It's just at this point, it's just a rough rule of thumb, right?
Yeah.
So these are the things that you need to do a residential retrofit HVAC right. It seems to me that each of these things takes a lot of time to do it right, and then time is money, right? And so whether you're a single person operation or you work for a large enterprise, time is money. And when you're competing with 2 or 3 other contractors who are putting out free quotes, and then you're spending all your time doing all this stuff, like how do you compete?
You get a lot more efficient than them.
That's part of it. The margins is part of it. But I would argue that value building might be the biggest piece.
Differentiation and value building.
Yeah.
100%.
Can you expand on that, Jeff?
So the differentiation portion is going to be that, hey, you're showing that I care enough to educate you. I'm not here to make a decision for you, but I'm going to guide you with the education. What you do with that education is totally up to you. I can tell you that most people don't communicate with clients before, during, or after appointments. Most people don't offer doing basic checks on systems either, and then just make assumptions or statements saying that that's the right thing to do. This is going to take care of that.
I'll be the hero.
How are you there again? Going into hero. The static pressure portion, again, that's offer decline at the beginning. So if we're looking at these points here as well, the evacuation, that's part of your process. That should be part of your process on install. You should be training. You should be doing those things properly. Same thing with charging line sets and charging the equipment properly. Setting everything up to superheat and subcool as designed per manufacturer specs. That's all what we should be doing as an industry.
Oh, we should post the art. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
We should post the article that Tanner was quoted in.
Yes.
Tanner and
Reedy
in ACHR.
The ACHR.
10 things you need to know as a homeowner, I believe, right? Or to get to know that you're getting a quality install. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is our boy Tanner here, and then Reedy, who isn't here this week.
I didn't even call anybody stupid here.
I'm almost ashamed of you. I don't know if I can call you a friend anymore.
That's it. I just got to double up on the insults on this show so I can make up for it. Pull that other guy up. I'm going to roast him now.
Tanner showing default aggressive right there. They put together, electrification is something that's coming our way. Like, it just is. You can fight it, but it's coming in time one way or another. It's just a matter of how long it takes and how fast it goes. You guys outlined 10 steps of how to do it right. There's the pre-installation interview, load calcs, which we can't do in a lot of cases. One thing that we're starting to do now that we're really looking forward to rolling out, we call it the likely load range. It's a super duper, it's a hyper simplified load calc, frankly, but it shows you the bottom end and the top end that a house might be. So you might have a heat load of 18,000 on the low end and 75 on the high, something like that.
Yeah, typical. If your house is 2,200 square feet, what are the load range of typical 2,200 square foot houses?
Yep.
And if we're not going to be doing infiltration measurement, and you're not going to be testing static pressure, then you're going to be doing a lot of guessing anyway. And so instead of guessing what your load calc is, instead we'll be like, well, it's 90% chance of being between here and here, because that's where 90% of houses this size are. So unless your house is super tight or super leaky, you're somewhere in between here and here. If you want to narrow it down, we're going to have to do some diagnostics and measurement and modeling.
Or you can tell me what size you want, sign here.
Or you can tell me what size you want, sign here.
That's the challenge of all this, because you may really want to downsize something. We really wouldn't advocate for downsizing at a free quote.
Unless instructed.
Unless instructed, yeah. But if you downsize and it doesn't work, who owns it? You do, because you played hero. Be the guide. Offer them their options.
It's painful sometimes. Replacing a 4-ton with a 4-ton in that 2,100 square foot house is going to be painful, but don't be the hero.
Yep.
It's hard for me. Like, Jeff is coaching me these days.
It's really hard because all of us here, if you're here watching, you care more than your clients. I care more than my clients. Jeff cares more than his clients. But we have to limit ourselves when we are working with them to where we only care as much as they do. Otherwise, we go into hero mode and we try and rescue them. And I don't know if anyone has experienced this, but you try to be the hero and you end up being the villain. And that is a crappy place to be. Now they're mad at you. Well, you told me this would work. Well, you did. So now you have to try and fix it. And I've been bit on 2 of our projects by doing that, where we tried to offer every single thing that we could think of. And then the client goes and checks every box. So it doesn't work. We own it. And I was like, I should have offered more stuff. Like I thought of more stuff after the fact. So it's always good to offer more, but don't promise that something will absolutely happen. That's a very risky thing. You think in odds of success.
There's definitely a difference of confidence and competence.
Yeah.
And know where you are.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. One last point that I like here, and then we should sign off because holy cow, we've been going for an hour and a half. Chicago HVAC, less callbacks, happier customers. With those bullet points, you're getting better quality customers. If they don't want to pay for those things, they are probably not a customer you want. There's some of that. And you can do the cheap change out sometimes to put food on the table as well. But they will know what they're in for. And then heating and cooling system services comments that you just don't compete. So if you do this well, you basically elevate yourself above. Like there's competition, but there's not really competition because
your biggest competition is yourself.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It's all about you
Yep.
and how you get better. That's how everybody else gets better.
Homeowners, a lot of the feedback that I'm getting from the guys is the homeowners are so blown away by the fact that you've taken time to educate them and given them all this material nobody else even began to give them. It just totally sets you apart and makes them much more comfortable dealing with you because you seem to care about helping them make good decisions.
That's that's so much it right there. Help them understand. There's one last question here. On the two systems that didn't work out properly, what were the things that fixed it? These were actually whole home projects. So the big miss that I made on one of them is we combined two systems into one. I didn't do a good job of expressing the need for duct design in doing that. So the trunk wasn't large enough going to the system that we just took out. And then there was too much duct leakage, and we needed to spray foam the duct in the crawl space there. So that was really challenging, and it's funny.
Well, he also chose not to do the duct design. So that really, I mean,
that goes back to him to a degree, and I was being a wimp too. So, I'm sorry, it was all my fault.
You can't go to child just like you want to keep them out of child.
Yeah, yep, and
And Sandler will help with all of that for folks that want to learn that stuff.
Exactly.
I like that screen name. Read it aloud.
Took me a second. That's that.
R134 a-hole.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So the good news on those, like HVAC actually has less risk in a lot of ways than these heavy duty home performance projects that we were doing. And in the heavy duty home performance stuff, you always want to make sure that there are more things that you're offering that the client's just not going to take, because there always needs to be some plausible deniability. Homes are extremely complicated, extremely interconnected. And when you start looking for that razor's edge, you get to have more risk. In general, if you're replacing the HVAC system and you put in a decent system and you have an idea, if you can, like what either the static pressure is or what the air leakage on the house is, there's a whole lot of risk that you can reduce. So I overpromised to that guy, and that sucks. That was my bad. So that was one of my learning experiences. And the other one is just not in my mind right now. So I'll remember it. We'll talk about it another show. Certainly, if there's a way to screw stuff up, Ted and I have probably pulled it off, and everybody here has managed to screw up a whole bunch of stuff too. So, I mean, I love the saying of a master has failed more times than a novice has tried.
And the important ones that I made the mistake and Nate was on his way to make that mistake, I let him make it. That was hard.
Yeah.
So that he
could
have his own story.
Yeah. So, and now we have stories, and that one sucks. So I definitely feel pain about that. And the other thing is, we did so much good to that house, and there's maybe 20 or 30 people in the country that were capable of the job that we did. And
Well, that house had like 7 attics or something, didn't it?
wasn't quite that bad, but it was really complex. It was this insane ranch that was like 3,500 square feet and like went in and out and all over the place. Um, it honestly it looked like a 70s porn scene. It was like a show. It was a really cool house. I liked how it looked. It still had some original audiophile stuff in it from the 70s. But I mean,
It was definitely a shag rug house.
oh man, was it ever? But it was a cool house. But
Avocado refrigerator.
Yep, all that stuff, like leaning in. So it wasn't mid-century modern; it was like pure 70s. Like think Boogie Nights. That was that house. But man, like we did such a good job, and there was so much stuff that was so damn near perfect, and to have it all fail over a trunk that was too small and not sealing some ductwork. Because in general, we find that sealing ductwork isn't utterly critical when it's inside the house. But I was
inside the enclosure,
yeah. And when I was crawling through that house at the end of the job, crawling through the crawl space, I'm like, it's warmer down here than it is upstairs.
Uh-oh.
Crap. And it was a very high-strung client, so things got not good. So, yeah, I can't say we always provided excellent experiences, but that is what Ted and I have striven to do, and everyone here strives to do too, is we want the homeowners to really enjoy their time with us, and we want to enjoy our jobs and our time with the homeowners that we work with. Would you all agree?
Yes.
Nicely put.
Yes.
And if we do that well, fundamentally, HVAC installs will get better. But how do we do that well?
Stay in our compartment.
We have a system for it. Doesn't mean it's always easy. But whatever way that you all can figure out to do that, how do you make it so that your clients enjoy the experience and you enjoy the experience? And if everyone involved likes what they're doing, things get so much better. And you're not going to have it happen every time. Like Tanner, you were talking about, you get really rough weeks and really easy weeks. So you have to know that it's not all going to be perfect, but you can make it substantially better. And if you take a look at the links that Ted posted to the interviews with Ronnie and Austin, you'll see how lives got changed by coming at it from a different way. And ironically, using this whole thing of not my money, not my problem, which again, I pushed back so hard for a long time on that, but you just can't care more than they do. So, gents, any other comments on how do we
After
fix
party?
bad installs?
I think we outlasted all of our viewers. Thanks
No,
for
there's still
coming,
a dozen
folks.
hanging in the whole time, Ted.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been, people.
Oh,
have been
but we wore them out.
Yeah.
Wore them out. They don't have any comments.
Yeah, there's that. Well, I was more asking our crew, but I think we're all tired now. So, anyway, everyone, thank you very much for coming. And I hope you learned something and have a little bit different view on things. And look up the HVAC 2.0 Advanced Discussion Group on Facebook and join us there. We discuss some things there. And very shortly, we will open up for a cohort of companies so that we can help you learn this system and we can try out the free quote process. So know that it will still have issues. It will be imperfect.
Hey, Abhi.
But it'll be good.
Abhi, you want to explain what a cohort is?
Yeah, it's just, like when you go into college or school, your fall cohort and your spring cohort, it's when a group of people enter into a training system at the same time. So that way you're going through classes at the same time and you're kind of upskilling at the same time. So that way you always have a group of people you have a connection with. And after you graduate and go out in the real world, so to speak, you can kind of keep in touch and stay, keep upskilling even after you go through the program. So the idea is, in the past, HVAC 2.0 was kind of like a soup kitchen, right? Come one, come all, come whenever. But I think now the idea is that you would do it in a sort of a cohort, so people have a sense of community and a sense of belonging, and they can go through the program together and then explore and take that back into their own business and upgrade their practices together. So
Well
I think
put
we
on.
should end on that. That's beautiful.
It is. All right. Well, good night, all. We'll see you next week, and we may well end up doing this. Yeah, here we are. I like the way that Avi explains things, very methodical. Amen.
Amen, brother.
Your friends. We are we are unlikely friends in a lot of ways.
That's why that's why we let a Canadian in the group.
That all goes back to Twitter. I don't know, like
I'm not your buddy, pal.
so, but yeah. So join us next week. We do this every week, and sometimes I'm a bum like today, and I only decide like last minute what the topic's going to be. But we're here every Monday.
Or maybe we won't even decide what the topic is, and you guys can come in and ask questions.
Yeah, that'd be awesome too. And ask me anything kind of episode. That'd be great. All right. Well, good night, all. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for coming.
Ken, Jeff,
Right.
Tanner, thanks. Thanks, Avi.
Good night.
Good night.